Alright, in this video we are going to see how to create this registration form and this login form work with Laravel. So what we need is, I want to access a URL called home. I won't be able to access it until and unless I am a registered user or I am a logged in user. So to log in I need to register first. So let me just register myself. Let me name this as UI monk, and this is the password, again same UI monk. So here there is a condition that we have made. The start date should be today and the end date should be, so let me just show the validation first, or let me just say the start date should be today and the end date should not be greater than 7 days of from today. Again let me repeat, the end date should not be greater than 7 days of today. So that means it should not be greater than 7. If I select 8, you should get an error in the while submitting it. If I click on submit, you will see the core state must be the date which is equal to 7 days. So now if I select the date which is not of today and click on submit, you will get an error saying that the core state should be today. So this is what we are going to implement in this tutorial, and let me just do it again. The start date should be today or greater than today, and the end date should be from today, it should be 7 days from today. If I make this like 15 days, it would give you an error saying that it should not be greater than 7. So let's just make this 6 and you are allowed now. And if I click on Laravel and if you click on submit, you will see you are now registered now. So if I click on login and give the credential which you have just created and click on submit, now I'll be able to access the home. And if I log out and try to access the home, I won't be allowed until I get logged in again. So let me just log in with the credentials and click on submit, and now I'll have access to the home. And after logging out, if I try to access, I'll be pushed back to the register page. So to follow along, I'll leave the source code in the description, and to download this template you need to get into the colorlive.com, and I'll leave the link of this beautiful HTML template in the description. So download it and start along with me. Alright, I have already installed the Laravel folder in my Laravel projects folder. So in case if you don't know how to install, this is episode number 30. I have already covered how to install Laravel in each episodes starting from episode 1 to 29. Now let's just fast forward and consider that I have installed Laravel and I have placed it in my Laravel projects folder, which is inside htdocs, and htdocs is, as you know, I'm using XAMPP, it would be inside XAMPP folder. Make sure your XAMPP is running or else it won't work. Now let's just create a database. If you click on new, you can give database name. Since I have given the folder for Laravel as subscriber 6, we can do the same, subscriber 6, and click on create. Now your database is created, and let's just open the Visual Studio Code. So in that case, just type code dot and it will open Visual Studio Code for you. Loading the Visual Studio Code will load the subscriber 6 Laravel folder in it. Now let's just link our database to this Laravel folder. In that case, you have to get into the environment file and get into the change the database name. Now we have named it as subscriber 6, and since I'm using XAMPP, the default username is root and the password is blank. Now that's done. Now what we need to do is, while installing, I have installed the authentication as well. So once I made that install, what will happen is Laravel will create a auth folder, and there you will find two files, login and register. Now if I search for PHP, if I make this folder run in local server, so which is by writing this command artisan serve, and it says in the localhost port 80, you can visit or you can view the Laravel project online. So 127.0.1 is nothing but localhost. Now if I search for login, you will see the Laravel's default login page. And if I search for register, again you will see Laravel's default register page. But I want to make this Laravel I want to make the default login and register to this kind of CSS HTML CSS file. So in that case what I'll do is, since this is an HTML file, its related CSS, JavaScript and images are stored inside a folder. So if you see, I'll leave the link in the description. So in the episode number 30, you'll see we have one index file and one assets folder. Inside this asset folder you'll find CSS, JavaScript, images and vendor, which will have some font or some jQuery and 8-weeker. So what it will do is just copy this and get into your Laravel project. Here in this case it's Laravel 6 subscriber 6, and paste it inside public, and that's done. Now what we need to do is, let's just open this index.html in our Visual Studio Code. So it's in the desktop, episode number 30, and we have index. And what I'll do is, I'll just copy this index file content and paste it inside register.php, let.php and login.blade.php. Let me just copy this and paste it, and the same way copy this and paste it. Now if you visit the login and register, both of them will have the same file. You see, now if I press Ctrl U, and if you see the link for the CSS, if I click on this, it is accessible. If I make a hard refresh, and what I'll do is, I'll use the Laravel code to link it properly. So here there would be a problem, like if I make changes in one head, I have to do the same thing in the another file also. So in that case, what I'll do is, in the auth folder I'll create another folder and call it as layout. Inside layout I'll create one more file and I'll name it as app.blade.php. Simply this will act as a wrapper. So let me just copy this and paste it. So just before the body and just after the body, just remove that, and so this will act as a wrapper. So while yield, and I'll just give a passkey called container. So what I need is, whatever is there inside the body, so this is inside body, I want it to get replaced with this yield. So to do that, what I'll do is, I'll create a new section and I'll pass the passkey. Here in this case is container, and since I open the section, I need to close it at the rate end section. The same way I'll do this for the login. Now if I make any changes in one header, that will be applied to both of them. So before that, I need to extends, which is layout, which is inside app. So till views will have access, but after view we have to specify the location. So now if I access it again, you will still able to access it because it's properly able to fetch the layout.app file. Now if you want to make any changes in CSS or header, you can just simply do it in one file, that will be reflected in all. Now I'm going to link properly. So here I'm going to use Laravel function, so that's the reason. Assets, it's a function, and we don't need this. This is the absolute URL. And since we have opened the function, we have to close the functions parameter. The same way for the JavaScript, if you press Alt, you will have multiple cursor, ASSETS, single quotes, press Alt, single quotes again, close the round bracket and close the Laravel code. Now I want to have the title change. So this is login and this is register, but you see both of them has the same title. So here again you will have yield, and inside yield you will have title. And now the same way as you did, we can have this another for title. You have to pass the pass key. Here in this case it's title, and we can have name called, since this is register page, let this be register, and for the title let this be title, sorry, login. Now if I make a refresh, you will see the title will get changed. Actually it's the singular, not assets, just asset. Control H, refresh it with simply asset, and that's done. And cool, you can see the title got changed. Now since this is working, now let's work on the login page. So in the login page we just need username and password, and let me just remove what all things is not necessary, so just to avoid our, so we can see we have a clear code. So register and login, cool. Now let's work on register. Now what we'll do is, if I click on submit, data that will be sent. So before that, let's just create a controller that will take care of the URL routing. So here for controller we have a command that need to send, which is php artisan make controller, and let the controller name be custom login. So here you will find a folder, sorry, a file in the http controller custom login. So what I need is, if I search for login, so in the web.php we'll define the route. So in the routes in the web.php, so whenever there's a call, so what I need is, if I click on submit, the data should get into somewhere. So in this case, let's just send it to register underscore submit. So this is a function that will be dealing with it, and this is the name of the route. And the same way we can have it for login also. This is the function that will be dealing with the data, and this is the name. So we are submitting, so these two should be forced. Now we need to create a function. I think it's not open yet. Yes, let's just create a PHP function for submit. So what I'll do is, if I click on submit, I want the data to should get displayed. So request $request, and we'll use the PHP dump and die function, so to display all the input field value using the all function. Cool. I think we don't need this. Now if I click on submit, so before that, in the action, in the register, in the action form action, since it's Laravel, we need to use cross site request forgery, and the action should be we need to pass the Laravel function, which is route. We are going to give the name of the route, so we have named it as what's wrong here, yeah, outer we have single quotes and inner we should use double quotes. Now what we need is, we'll just use the name route here for submit. This is the name of the route, and let's just take this closer, and the name. Now if I click on submit, you will see all the data will get submitted and it will be displayed. Login, register, click on submit, and it's redirecting to login. Let's just see why. And yes, it's submit. Okay, the reason is we have not given the class name, so we have to give the class name. So when there's a call for this URL, get into this controller and get into this function. So that's what we are saying. It's saved. Now if I click on register, you would see the data, name, password are stored here. Now what we'll do is we'll use the database to save the data. So here in this case, by default Laravel will have a database folder, and in the database folder migration, since there would be two files, we'll just need to choose our user table because that is where we are going to modify it. So what all data we need? We need name, password, we need name, password, and course start and course end and courses. It's a drop down. Now we need to create these table accordingly. So we have name, we have password, yes we have a password, and then we need course start. And now what I have done is let there be name, let there be email, let there be password, and let the course start and course end data type be string, sorry data date, and let the course be string. So once this is done, what you have to do is you just need to type php artisan migrate. So once the four functions are executed, or four files are executed, you will see the 5 tables would have created. So if you click on users table, that's where we have made the changes on the columns. So we have course start, course end, and courses. So cool. Now what we need to do is we need to add validation to the register file. So if you click on submit, it should not allow empty fields. So here again we would have a condition like this: course date should start from today, and course end date should start from today, but it should have 7 days validity. So if I start from 1, if I select more than the date, which is of 8, so I should get a validation error. So for that, what I'll do is in the controller, here we need to add a validation. Now you'll see we have made the name as required, we have made the password as required, and we have made the course as required, but the course start date is required. Also it should be date, and it should accept the format of YMD. So let me give a quick hints. If the HTML is if the HTML tag date, and if there is a HTML tag called date, and you want that date should send a value to any server side, it will send it in the format called year, month, and date. So that's what we are validating. So even though if you don't do this, anyway the HTML is going to give this kind of format, and then you are passing the another condition saying that the date should start from today. The same for the course end, as I said, till here it is same, but the course end date should be greater than 7. So in that case, what I'll do is I'll get the today's date and add it with 7, and I have made the format again YMD. So that's done. Now if you click on submit, you will see you don't need this. If you click on submit, you will see the data won't get submitted. Instead it would be refreshed and sent back to the same page, and there is no sign of any error as well. So in that case, if you want to show the error, so here you will need to create an error directory, so which Laravel provides. And now you see we have error directory, and it is going to display the error. Now if I type make sure there is one more thing, we need to make sure the name of the HTML attribute match with your column name. So it's not necessary, but it's better that you have this in this way, that is the name should match with your column name of database. name attribute. Cool. Now let's just try sending the data, and here you'll see the name field is required. So if you want to know where this is coming from, it's inside resources. You'll find a lang folder and you'll find validation. So if you search for required, and here it says this field is required, this field would be replaced with your name attribute, and you can make this, you can remove this, and if you search refresh again, you'll just see name required. You can see name required. This is coming from this file. So the same way you can have a copy of this and change the name attribute itself, and the same for the date picker. Control V to close the sidebar. Course end date, and finally the courses. So if you see why the function first, so here it's very simple. We have many validation. If this gets submitted, if this gets satisfied, then this will act as a first. If these two are satisfied, then this will act as a first. So that's it. So if I click submit, and you will see validation on all input fields. So if I make this name as Vishal and click on submit, you'll see the Vishal will disappear. And if I make this password, and it will get disappeared on submit. So if you want to prevent that, what you will do is you will have a value attribute. So here you'll have value, and over here again I'm going to use Laravel function. So old, you can have your name attribute here. The same is true for password. So if I type the name and click submit, the name would be there. Submit. So you can see the name is there, but password is gone, but that's fine. So let's just try selecting the date which is less than today's date, and if I click on submit, you should see the start date is not valid. So in that case, you can again customize the function, which is in the validation you have mentioned that after or equal, and let's just get into the resource folder, and lang, and then validation, search for this. Actually it's not a valid format, that's what it is specifying. I think this is storing in this it's not storing in this format. So in that case, if you want to see how which data got submitted, so you get to the network tab and click submit, or select the date again and click submit, and here you will see two values, and in the response or in the payload you'll see it is getting sent as date, month and year. Let's just change that, since we are using jQuery date picker. So here we need to give ID to the input field. So what we can do is ID course start, and for this let this be course end. Now we need to specify this ID in the jQuery. So this is start and this is end. So now we'll have the format like YMND. Now if I click on try saving this, and if I select, it's already selected. So this is start date, click on submit, and the course submit, you can see YMD, and let's just see, let's just select this 27 and click on submit. The course date must be a date, should be equal to, so let's say, so this is working, and let's just try selecting the end date, which is like 30 days from today. So I should give an error. The course date must be a date equal, which is 7 date. So that this is also working. Cool. Start date and end date. And now we can just specify the name and the password. We same Vishal, so that we don't forget. So now if I click on submit, so that is working. So once this is done, what we need to do is we need to save these data that we received from the request variable. Let's just do that. So here we need to use the user model. Make sure you're importing the model. So here we are going to use the user model, we are going to use the auth class, we are going to convert the password to hash, and we will be using session. Now I have received the input field and stored it into a variable called data. Now this is an associative array. We can call it with named index. So here we got the input field values over here, and we are storing them into the relevant column names. Now we got the name and we got the course. It's very straightforward. And the password we are converting to hash with the help of hash class and make it a static function. And then we are receiving the start date and end date, and I'm storing it in the format called ymd in the course start date and end date. So once this is done, we need to send the data back. We need to send them back to the register page with a button saying that login here. So here we are going to redirect to the route. We don't have a route, so simply redirect to URL, which is slash register, and with the message registered successful. So this is the key and this is the value. So we can access the key from the register page. So we'll paste a code just below the submit button, and now we are accessing if the session has a message. You can see this is the key, and get the message and display the login link also, and I have used the route login. So now if I try saving it again, Vishal, password Vishal, the start date and end date 7 days, course, let this be After Effects. If you click on submit, you'll be if it's got saved successfully. Field email does not have a value, so email does not have a value. So in that case, what you will do is, we don't need email for this course, so I'll just delete it, the value email, and drop it. Yes, and everything seems fine. Make sure everything is saved. Click on submit. Field course does not have a default value, so we are receiving the name, we are receiving the password, and this is the 29. Name, password, updated and created and updated, but it's not sending the start date and end date. So let's just try sending this without converting to YMD, because we'll be getting directly from the date picker as YMD. Course start date 1st, course end date 6th, course After Effects, submit. So if you find this kind of error, what you can do is you can again uncomment this and just commit all, and try it again. 1 and 6, course submit, course start and course end. So YMD. Now let's just see whether we are able to we are using the same username and password, sorry, the same column names. I got the error. We should make this fillables. So name, password, course date, course end date, course start date, course end date, and courses. We have to make this fillables. And if I submit again, the URL does not exist, so we have to correct it. So instead of URL we can just directly make this redirect. So now let's try again, submit. So you'll see login registered successful. You need to click on login, and yes, login page is there. So if you want to style this, you can do it. So we can simply make this inside card footer. Let's try again. This time John, again password is John. The start date and end date should be less than 7 days. Laravel submit, and yes, I think this is not made of Bootstrap, that's why. If you click on login, now we get the login. Now the same way we have to do this for the login page also. So let me just do this. Here in the action again, we need to copy the same. It should be post. Here we need to change the name route. Remember, you have created a login submit already, and for the errors, this is for name and this is for password. Don't forget to change the name attribute, or else you won't get the error as expected. Now in the login we can have validation here again. So here instead submit register submit, this is going to be login submit now, and in the validation we'll be just having the name and password, and if I try submitting, you should get the error, name and password is missing, and it says page expired. That means the login does not work as expected. Click on submit, and yes, name is required and password is required. Now in this case we need to validate the received name and email. So in that case, previously we have used request all, now we will use request only. We'll get request data using only the name and password, and store it into data associative array. This will be an associative array now. Now we'll use the auth class. And auth class static function attempt. If this is succeeded, then get into the home page. If this succeeds, then redirect to the login page again and save the message that login failed. So again, just like we did, we can have this for the login also, except the button. So if there is no user, so let's say if I type David, we know David won't be there because we have not created it. So here you will see login failed. Cool. And now if the login succeeds, what we need to do is, first thing, with this authentication ID, get the ID of it and save it into the user ID area. With the received user ID, get the relevant row. If suppose the user Vishal has logged in, so get the ID of it, and with the ID you can get the whole row data, and this whole row data we are going to save it into the session. And you can see we are putting it into the session with the variable called user data. Now if the web page has 5 pages, then for the whole 5 pages until you are logged in, you will have access to this session data. So that is, the whole row will be accessible for all 5 pages. And then redirect to home. Now let's see whether we have access to home. So if I search for home again, it won't be accessible. So let's just get into home. So in the resources, views, home, so before the home you will need to get into the app HTTP controller, home controller, which is responsible for showing the home. So let me just hide the middleware authentication. So now you can access home without login because we have commented the middleware part. Now let's just log in, and once the login gets succeeded, we will redirect, it will get redirected to the home. If the login succeeds, let's just login failed. This is the username and this is the password. I think it had space, or yes, it got succeeded. Now you can see there's a logout. If I click on logout, so again in the web.php, let this be post, but let the URL be login logout, and the relevant function is login logout and the name is login logout. Now in the custom login, again custom login, we'll be creating a function again called login logout. So this is the function and the function name, and I'm saying that log out from the authentication class and delete the created session and then redirect to login again after logging out. Now the URL is login logout. You can see this is the URL, and you see over here this is coming from the resources, views, and then we have layouts app. So if you search for logout, so this is where it is coming from. Now you need to make sure to have the href properly and make sure this is forced, and once if it got logged out, you would be sent back to the login page again, and if I try to access the home, it would be accessible. But let's just prevent this from having it without logging in. We don't want to we don't want the user to visit the home, so in that case you will be creating a middleware. So just search for middleware and get the code for it. It's again a command that we will run from the command prompt. So it says make a middleware called login check. So here in the app you'll have a middleware folder inside http middleware, and this is the login check that we have created. And now middleware is a concept that comes like if there is a request from the user to get into the home page, Laravel will check in the middleware if there is any condition is there or not. If there is a condition, then this condition would be written in middleware. Again, let me repeat one more time. If a user requests home URL, and Laravel will immediately get into the middleware and check if there is any condition. If there is any condition, then it will satisfy the condition. If the condition got failed, then it would be redirected accordingly. So let's just check if the user is logged in or not. If the user is logged in, then display it, or else redirect them. And we are going to check with the auth function. If the user is logged in, then proceed properly, or else redirect them, return redirect to login /login. Now this is not enough. You need to register the middleware in the kernel. So you need to get into middleware route and just copy the first and paste it. So this is the function, sorry, this is the function, this is the class name, and this is the nickname for the class. So we need to use the nickname of class in the middleware group, sorry, route group. So in the web.php we need to make sure which URL should get blocked from directly accessing it. So in this case it's the home middleware, and we need to create a middleware group. So with the middleware group we'll assign the middleware to this route group. So again I'm repeating, so which URL you want to restrict? I want to restrict this URL. So we will create a route group for this restricted URL with the condition for the middleware, and we need to pass the nickname for the middleware, which is we have mentioned it in kernel, and this is the middleware name. and now you won't be able to access the home. So if I try to access the home, you won't be able to, because you need to log in first. So if you want to change it to register, you can do that. Now if I try to get into home, I would be pushed back to register page. Cool. Now if I try to register with a user called David, and this is the password again, and the date should be less than 7, or let's choose greater than 7 and try for the validation error, and you'll see it should not be greater than 7. So let's just be 6, and let's just make this Laravel, and username and password, click on submit. Now you'll be redirected to login page, and now with the username and password that we have created, if you click on submit, you will be getting into the home page. And after logging out, and if I try to access the same URL, I won't be allowed. I'm pushing I get pushed back to the register page. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening.